Hey, how y'all doing? This is Hunt 919 Truth or Sports coming to you with another segment. Hopefully everybody's having a good day or a good night whenever you do hear this. This is my preseason prediction for Colorado versus the Kansas State Wildcats. First, let me say something real quick, and I'm only saying this because of the communication that I have in the comment sections with some of the people who listen to some of my segments. I never do a full breakdown of Colorado purposely because most of the people follow Colorado and they already know about their team and what's going on with it, even though I'm going to probably do a breakdown on that pretty soon. But I normally just like to talk about the opponent because that's one of the unknowns is the opponent that they're going against. So let me get right into who Kansas State is. Kansas State went 9-4 last year, 6-1 at home, 2-3 on the road in the Big 12. They did play Texas last year, only losing to 3 to them in overtime. So I'm gonna tell you their 4 losses real quick. They lost at Missouri by 3. They lost at Oklahoma State by a touchdown. They lost at Texas again by 3 in overtime, and they lost at home to Iowa State by a touchdown. So that tells you that they were a well-disciplined and well-coached team last year. They fought to the end, even in their games that they lost. They obviously were in situations where they could have won the game. Just like they lost it, they could have easily won it, which is what most teams, most coaches want out of their team. Just give us a chance at the end of each game to win the game. So they were really close to being an undefeated team last year, but they still did well. They did go to a bowl last year. They went to the Pop-Tart Bowl. They played NC State and beat NC State by a couple of touchdowns, I think it was. So they have a good team. Nothing bad you can say about that. Now the offense, they have a very good quarterback, even though he's young, named Avery Johnson. He's a sophomore, but he has not played that much. He doesn't have a lot of experience. He was considered one of their best prospects that they have ever signed as far as talent that came to Kansas State. It's interesting because him and Dylan Edwards were 2 top prospects coming out of Kansas at the time, like a 1-2 punch. Even though Dylan ended up transferring to Notre Dame, then he ended up transferring to Colorado, and then back to Kansas State. He did a lot in a year. They also label Avery Johnson as their most important recruit that they've had ever at their school. So that's something that you got to kind of think about as far as talent. Now, he didn't play a lot at all until the last game of the season. He actually didn't start. His first start came in the bowl game against NC State, and he played well. That was his first start. Like I said, his numbers were 14 for 31, 178 yards and 2 touchdowns. But overall, his stats last year was 479 yards and 5 touchdowns in limited play. As far as the quarterback comparison, there's really not one. Shador is levels above him in all aspects of the game. Experience, knowledge of the game, how to play the position. Shador can pick the defensive part, of course. Shador can play from in front, and with the lead, he can also play from behind. Just a well-balanced, high-caliber quarterback. So it's not really a quarterback comparison that you can really have doing that. And saying that doesn't mean that Kansas State will not win games. So let's get into the running backs. Right now on the depth chart, they have as their starter DJ Giddens. He ran for over 1,200 yards last year and 10 touchdowns, which is excellent. Anytime you can get double digits in touchdowns as a running back, I think that's good. He's a 6'1 guy, 212 pounds, so he's a big running back. And then, of course, they'll come right in as far as the depth chart is concerned. They'll come right in with Dylan Edwards. The transfer from Notre Dame and Colorado, but he's a speed guy. We all know about him. He's very dangerous in the open field, whether he's running the ball or catching the ball out of the backfield. He can be very dangerous with his speed, as we saw last year when they played TCU. Now, let me give you a couple of stats about Dylan that you probably didn't know because I didn't know until I did my research. But he was Pac-12 Freshman of the week that they played TCU, the very first week of the season. He did play in all 12 games. He played in 6 as a starter, so he was a 50% starter as a freshman, which is great. He finished with 321 yards and 1 touchdown on 76 carries, which is terrible. And I did videos on that, and there's no fault of his own. They obviously had trouble or issues with their line and how they played him. You know, a lot of us fans as Colorado understand what happened with that because he can get 321 yards in 2 games easy, maybe in 1 game. He did have 36 receptions for 299 yards and 4 touchdowns, 4 scores. He was the first true freshman in Colorado with at least 250 yards rushing and 250 yards receiving in the same season. He was only the ninth. This was only the 9th time that was ever done in the school's history. He had the most receiving touchdowns by CU freshmen since 2010, which is excellent. He also set the Colorado single game record for the most receiving yards and touchdowns by a running back. He tied the school's overall receiving touchdown record. He also had the Buffs' first touchdown on the year, which made him the first true freshman to have the first points of the season since 2002. He was the first player in 7 seasons to score 4 touchdowns from scrimmage in his FBS debut. So he did a lot of things in a short amount of time. So you have to give him credit for that. And that tells you the totality of his talent. It shows you what he possesses. And I'm sure Kansas State's going to try to use that, and we'll get into that later. We'll go to the receiving room. There's a guy named Dante Cephas, Cephas. Excuse me if I mispronounced it. I hate messing up people's names. But he's a senior wide receiver. He came to Kansas State as a transfer from Penn State and Kent State. He went to Kent State first, went to Penn State, then he transferred to Kansas State. At Kansas State, his best season was in 2021 when he had over 1,200 yards on 82 receptions before he decided to transfer. And I did segments on this. If you're 1,000 yards running back, 1,000-yard receiver, why not stay at the school that you're at? You may not ever get to 1,000 yards again. That school has made you a priority in their offense. Why not stay there where you have it good? But, you know, kids leave, and he's been struggling since, and he's trying to find another home in Kansas. So we see how he does. We have another receiver that we need to be aware of. Colorado needs to be aware of. That's Jace Brown. He actually had to catch. When they played against NC State in the bowl game, he had to catch to put them ahead for good, and they ended up winning that game. But last year, he had 437 yards for 3 touchdowns. His best game yard-wise, he had 98 yards against Kansas last year. So that tells you that he can, go for 100 yards if given the opportunity. Now we're going to get into why I think they're going to struggle. Their offensive line, they have one guy that has experience. His name is Easton Kilty, Kilty. He's a senior offensive line. He's a senior offensive lineman. They lost most of their line because of the NFL and graduation. So they're kind of rebuilding. The line last year, of course, had a 1,000-yard rusher, which is excellent. They also ran 450 against NC State last year in their bowl game. So they will be building around him, which I think that Colorado can exploit. That's, the offensive line and the defensive lines, of course, are very important. So you have that. As far as linebackers, you have 2 of them that you need to be aware of, Austin Moore and Desmond Purnell. Between the both of them, they had 244 yards, which tells you they are tackling machines. So as far as the running backs, as soon as you come through that line, you got pretty good linebackers who will and can make the tackle. So let's move to the safeties. The Kansas State coaches believe they have 2 Big 12 caliber safeties on their defensive side of the ball. One is named Marquise Sigle, Sigle. In 2023, he was an All Big 12 honorable mention and an All Big 12 honorable mention defensive newcomer of the year. He transferred to Kansas State from North Dakota. So as soon as he got to Kansas State, he had an immediate impact. So you have to give him credit for that. He's a guy that you have to look out for. He also had 63 total tackles last year. The second guy is VJ Payne. He transferred in from Ball State. No, Vijay Payne didn't. Vijay Payne is one you have to look out for. Then you have a transfer named Jordan Riley who transferred in from Ball State. Excuse me. So those are three safeties. That's going to be, they hope to challenge Shador, in the passing game. So in totality, as far as the game is concerned, I think Colorado will have to be careful and cautious of the big play from Dylan Edwards. I'm pretty sure that the coach wants to show Colorado how they could have used him and why they wish they would have kept him, because that's how coaches and players want to do. When you come back to a place that you were before, you want to play well, and I do believe those coaches are going to try to put Dylan in the position to succeed, and definitely they want him to score a touchdown. So they're going to have to keep an eye on Dylan, because they're going to make a conservative effort to make Dylan, one of their top players as far as production from the offensive side of the ball when they play each other. The offensive line being built on the Kansas State side is going to be an issue. I think they will struggle against Shador, because Shador is an established quarterback. He averages 3,000 yards a season. We all know that he can pick defenses apart if he's given the opportunity. And with Colorado having one of their biggest lines that they've ever had, if they know what they're doing as far as blocking, the Shador would definitely pick them apart. So that's something that you have to think about. The quarterback from Kansas State, like I said before, he's new. He's still going to be young. So by the time he plays Colorado, it's going to be his sixth game or his sixth start, barring any injuries, which is still kind of young, and a lot of things will still be new to him. So I think they can take advantage of that as well. The receiving core in Kansas State, they're good, but they still haven't really played together too much from everything that I read up on. So you're going to have a young quarterback, and then you're going to have you got two guys at the receiving core, but overall they're going to be some young guys on that side of the ball. And that when you're a new quarterback or a young quarterback, you need veterans. It's guys with experience that can kind of help you out and help you figure out what you're seeing and what you're not seeing on the field. And I think Shador's consistency overall would be the deciding factor. I think he would exploit just like he would exploit a lot of people. He's not considered a top pick for no reason. So I think Shador will do well, and I think the lack of an offensive line, a cohesive offensive line for Kansas State, I think will also be a deciding factor. I do think it'll be a good game. Obviously, Kansas State has good coaches and they know what they're doing, but I think Colorado will win this game by a couple of touchdowns by the reasons I just gave you. I have them at 4-2 after this game for the season. So it's been Hunt 919 Truth Sports. Ride with me. It's been Hunt 919 Truth Sports. Ride with me.